Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum and good morning, everyone. I'm Dr. Shamal Anwar, and I welcome you all on behalf of the Department of Academics and Obstetrics and Gynecology to the grand round on long-term consequences of polycystic ovarian syndrome. It is my pleasure to introduce to you our speaker, Dr. Iram Zulfikar. She has recently joined us as assistant consultant in the Department of Obstetrics and Gynecology. She has done her FCPS in obstetrics and gynecology. The session, like usual, will be split into two parts. The first 30 minutes we'll have the presentation, and after that we'll have the question and answer session. All of the participants who are joining us through Zoom, I just request you all to please mute your mics and turn your videos off so that we can avoid unnecessary interruption in between the presentation. If you have any questions, feel free to raise your hands and we'll be happy to take your questions once the presentation is over. So a little bit about the topic, long-term consequence, very little is known about the long-term consequences of polycystic ovarian syndrome. So it is indeed a very interesting topic. Polycystic ovarian syndrome is a condition which has a higher prevalence in the South Asian countries, specifically in our country, India and Bangladesh. It is a complex condition. It has got a very wide spectrum of clinical manifestation. So we are all very excited about today's talk, and without any further ado, I'd now like to invite Dr. Iram to the stage. Please join me in welcoming her.
Thank you, Dr. Shmail. Assalamu alaikum, everyone, and welcome. Today, we're going to discuss the long-term consequences of polycystic ovaries. First, we'll have a look on today's objectives. It's not working.
I think you should just click on the screen from your background.
Okay.
Mouse we use.
The learning objectives will be the definition of the polycystic ovaries, signs and symptoms of the polycystic ovaries, how to diagnose that a person is having polycystic ovaries, long-term sequelae, and screening and the management of the polycystic ovaries. As far as the definition of polycystic ovaries is concerned, there is no specific definition. It is an endocrine disorder which is present about 15 to 20% of the women of reproductive age group. And diagnosis of polycystic ovaries is based on the Rotterdam criteria, which proposes that if two of the following three features are present, then a person is said to have polycystic ovaries. Basically, in 2003, ISHRE and ASRM, they conducted a conference in Rotterdam in which they proposed the following features, that if these three features they are present in a patient, and we have to diagnose that if two of these three features are present, then the person is said to have polycystic ovaries. First is the presence of the clinical and biochemical features of the hyperandrogenism. As far as the clinical features are concerned, it is hirsutism, alopecia, and acne. Patient may present with all three features, or it may be present in the varying degrees. Then biochemical is done by doing the investigations, which will be discussed later. Menstrual irregularities, some of the patients they present with the oligo-ovulation, oligomenorrhea, and even some of the patients have the amenorrhea of more than 3 to 4 months. And ultrasound features. It's a diagram which is showing a scan of ovary. You can see they are peripherally arranged follicles. It's like a necklace appearance. And the diagnosis, according to the Rotterdam criteria, is if the follicles of 12 or more than 12 in number, and if there is volume is more than 10 centimeter cube, and their size is about 2 to 9 millimeters, then the patient is said to have polycystic ovaries. Here I would like to request all the radiologists that please don't label the patient as polycystic ovarian syndrome on the basis of the scan only. Especially in the adolescents, we can't label it on the basis of the scan. After 20 years of age, we have to consider these scan findings. This definition of the polycystic ovaries, it requires the exclusion of the other underlying conditions like the disorders of the adrenal gland, pituitary, and thyroid. They may present with the same features of hyperandrogenism like alopecia, hirsutism, acne, menstrual irregularities. So once we exclude all the other underlying pathologies, then we can diagnose the patient as polycystic ovaries. Here we have a clinical spectrum of polycystic ovaries, all the signs and symptoms: hyperandrogenism, menstrual disturbances, infertility, obesity, and incidental finding on scan showing polycystic ovaries. Not the syndrome, only the polycystic ovaries on the scan. Features of the hirsutism, the presence of hair on the chin. Here we have some of the investigations which can be carried out in a patient with polycystic ovaries. In clinical practice, we don't do androgens, but androgens can be done and their levels are increased. The normal levels of testosterone, they are usually 0.5 to 1.8 nanomoles per liter. And if they are increased, it is a sign of the polycystic ovaries. But if the testosterone levels are more than 5 nanomole per liter, then we have to investigate it further because it can be because of the androgen secreting tumors of the ovary. Luteinizing hormone level, it is also increased. The normal values are from 2 to 8 international units, and it is also increased. And most of the cases, it is 2 times as compared to the FSH levels, because if FSH level is also increased, that it can be sign of the ovarian failure, that both FSH and LH, they are markedly elevated. So we have to differentiate it between ovarian failure and polycystic ovaries. Ideally, the LH and FSH level should be done in first 3 days of menstruation because it has maximum levels at that time. Sex hormone binding globulins, they are basically decreased because the fasting insulin levels, they are increased, and this fasting insulin level basically causes the liver to decrease the production of sex hormone binding globulins, and when they are decreased, the free androgen index, it increases. FAI is basically free androgen index, and it is calculated by the formula of total testosterone levels, and then we multiply it with 100 and divide it by sex hormone binding globulins. Estradiol levels are increased and AMH levels are increased. AMH is not the diagnostic criteria, but usually it's also done along with it. Now, what are the possible late sequelae associated with the polycystic ovaries? Risk of gestational diabetes, and if not treated, then it can lead to type 2 diabetes, dyslipidemias, hypertension, cardiovascular diseases, anxiety, depression, endometrial hyperplasia, and endometrial carcinoma. Now we'll have a look on the polycystic ovaries and diabetes. Basically, the patient who are polycystic in adulthood, whenever they conceive, they're increased risk of developing gestational diabetes. So they should be screened for gestational diabetes as far as all the maternal and fetal complications are associated with the GDM. And screening is done by oral glucose tolerance test, which is done at 24 to 28 weeks of gestation. If any abnormality is detected, then we have to go for further investigations, strict fetal-maternal surveillance to look for all the fetal and maternal complications. Women with the PCOS who are overweight and whose BMI is basically, its BMI is 30 kg per meter square, but in Asian women's in our society, if the weight is more than 25 kg per meter square, then we should screen them for type 2 diabetes. Women with the PCOS who are obese, they have 10 to 20% risk of impaired glucose tolerance. And if left untreated, they have chances of developing into the type 2 diabetes. This incidence is about 50% in the next 5 years if it is not treated in time. So it is very important to screen the patient for GDM. And once you have diagnosed them as GDM, then do check even after the pregnancy care whether the glucose levels are still impaired or they are within the normal limit. Cardiovascular diseases, obesity, and the metabolic abnormalities, these are the recognized risk factors for the development of the ischemic heart diseases. Lack of the physical activity, family history of diabetes, dyslipidemias, hypertension, these all are associated with the PCOS. And these all can ultimately lead to the cardiovascular disorders. Ideally, hypertension, dyslipidemias, impaired glucose tolerance, these all should be screened as soon as possible. It's better to diagnose them early and then treat them so we can prevent the further complications of the polycystic ovaries. Sleep apnea. PCOS patient, they have increased risk of sleep apnea. You can either ask a patient, if the patient is not saying that she or he is having snoring, you can ask the partner that whether a patient is having snoring and daytime fatigue. So you can also investigate regarding the sleep apnea in order to investigate and treat. Infertility. Uh, PCOS account for almost 80 to 90% of the women with an ovulatory infertility. Basically, the pathogenesis in the PCOS is that because of increased levels of luteinizing hormone and increased levels of the androgens secreted by the theca cells of the ovary, it leads to an ovulation. This is the cause which is leading to infertility. So the obesity also influences the ovarian function and infertility. So cycle disturbances are related to disturbances in the insulin metabolism. So hypertension, hypersecretion of luteinizing hormone, which is found in 40% of the PCOS patient, is associated with decreased chances of conception. And once a patient conceives, there are increased chances of miscarriages and risk of GDM and later on type 2 diabetes in life. So we have to screen it as soon as possible. Elevated luteinizing hormone concentration are mostly found in the slim girls, and mostly the obese women, they are mostly hyperinsulinemic, not their luteinizing hormone levels may be normal. Here are a few strategies that how we induce ovulation in PCOS patient. Basically, if we go for the weight reduction, the ideal thing is the weight reduction, and it is the first line management of the polycystic ovarian syndrome. When a patient reduces even 1 to 2% of the weight, and sometimes with just lifestyle modification and dietary modification and exercise, their ovulation is occurring. And if ovulation is not occurring with the weight reduction, we can go for clomiphene citrate. RCOG recommend clomiphene citrate as a first line for the ovulation induction, whereas ISHRAE, they say that letrozole, that is aromatase inhibitors, they are the first line for the ovulation induction. Here we're using aromatase inhibitors, basically letrozole for the letrozole use कर रहे हैं. And there are further therapies कि अगर वो clomiphene citrate से भी patient जो है वो ovulate नहीं कर रही, then we can go for parenteral gonadotrophic therapy. उसके further regimes हैं step up, step down, chronic step down regime. So this is a different topic. Laparoscopic ovarian drilling is the end stage treatment कि अगर patient किसी भी तरह conceive नहीं कर रही. Polycystic ovaries patient, they are at risk of developing ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome. When we start ovulation induction, we usually counsel the patient regarding the ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome because it is a feature that patient present with a severe abdominal pain and it is a medical emergency. So if it is not treated in time, it can even lead to thromboembolism and it can increase the mortality. So it is very important to screen the patient while you are giving ovulation induction with the serial ultrasound scan, whether ovarian hyperstimulation is occurring or so. Hirsutism, as I have already shown you a picture of hirsutism. Hirsutism is characterized by the terminal hair growth of the male pattern. The hair distribution usually occurs as if hairs are present on chin, upper lip, chest, upper and lower back, and upper and lower abdomen, upper arms, and inner thighs and buttocks. A standardized scoring system which is used for the demarcation of this hirsutism is Ferriman-Galvez score and a modified Ferriman-Galvez score. And this scoring system should be kept in mind, and it should be actually done before and after the treatment of the hirsutism. So you can compare whether the treatment is successful or not, and what's the update. Treatment option for hirsutism, they are the cosmetic and medical treatments. In cosmetic, girls go for electrolysis, laser, bleach, waxing. And medical therapies usually we give androgens and sometimes even combined oral contraceptive pills, they are effective. Nowadays, we are using a fluornithine cream, which is available with the name of Vanica. And it is used for topically used for the treatment of hirsutism. Basically, it contains, the cream has an inhibitor of the ornithine decarboxylase present in the hair follicle. So it directly inhibits the production of the hair at the hair follicle level. Depression, yeah, it's very important to discuss it here because PCOS patient, they are at increased risk of psychological and behavioral disorder, as well as their quality of life is really miserable, and they are at increased risk of developing anxiety, depression, and eating disorders. That's why they are getting more and more weight and becoming obese because of this anxiety and just eating disorders. They have sexual dysfunction in the relationship dysfunction. So it should be treated. All these psychological issues should be considered in all women with PCOS, with depression. Depression and anxiety should be routinely screened for. So you can, if they are present, you can counsel the patient and you can deal the patient and refer them to the qualified personnel for the further management. Because it's a vicious circle. When a patient gains weight, start eating, all the psychological disturbances, so it leads to worse and worse things. So it's better to screen them and treat them in time. Polycystic ovaries also has a relationship with the cancers because a patient who present with the amenorrhea means the absence of the menstruation. The girls who have amenorrhea of 3 to 4 months, they have unopposed estrogen, which is continuously secreted from the ovaries, and as a result of this, there is hyperplasia of the endometrium. Even there is no ovulation and no progesterone is released from the ovary, as a result of which endometrium becomes hyperplastic. And this also continues, and ultimately hyperplasia changes into the cystic glandular changes. And once the cystic glandular changes appear, it may proceed to the adenocarcinoma of the endometrium. Patients with the PCOS have basically a threefold increased risk of developing adenocarcinoma of endometrium as compared to the other population. However, its incidence is 4% in less than 40 years of age in other population. Transvaginal scans are usually considered for the measurement of the endometrial thickness in the married women. Whereas in unmarried girls, we go for the transabdominal scans. We don't do transvaginal scans. If endometrial thickness is 7 mm or even less than that, they are less likely to go into the endometrial hyperplasia and ultimately cystic glandular changes and adenocarcinoma. So if it is more than 7 mm, then you have to screen it with the help of endometrial sampling. And the gold standard for the endometrial sampling is basically the hysteroscopic guided endometrial biopsy. We have to do that. It's a good practice to recommend withdrawal bleeds with gestrogens. What we concluded from all this lecture and meeting that PCOS is basically a common endocrine disorder and it is associated with serious medical conditions. Its treatment has basically three main aspects. First, we have to diagnose the disease in time. It should be identified before the complications develop. Secondly, it needs a holistic approach. It's not the matter of gynecologist. You have to deal it in the multidisciplinary approach. Gynecologist, dietitian, psychiatrist, you have to deal the patient in such a way that psychological, cosmetic, and all the worries of the patient should be considered. And it is mentioned in the last, but the most important thing, this is the most important thing, that creating awareness among the girls, and especially their mothers and parents, that polycystic ovaries is not something to disappear. You have to just treat the patients, treat the symptoms. You don't have to treat the lab findings. You have to treat the symptoms of the patient. And you have to increase the awareness regarding lifestyle modification, exercise, and that's all, which is the most important thing, is lifestyle modification and exercise. It can even improve the ovulation, it can reduce the weight. And once the patient's weight is reduced, they're more confident, their eating disorders, it also managed. So it's better to counsel the patient. Then you have to screen it in time, and then you can prevent the further complications. That's all what I have to say about the polycystic ovaries. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Iram, for the wonderful presentation. I just take this opportunity to highlight two very important things in polycystic ovarian syndrome. One, like Dr. Iram said, that it's very important to manage these women in a multidisciplinary team. And the team should always include a psychologist. So we being gynecologists, the endocrinologists, even the dermatologists, we see a lot of women with PCOS. But the thing is that we usually focus on the physical manifestation and tend to ignore the psychological impact that the disease can have in these women. So evidence also supports that women who have been treated in a multidisciplinary team, which included a gynecologist, endocrinologist, a dietitian, and a psychologist, the treatment outcome was far better than those who were just treated by a gynecologist or an endocrinologist. Secondly, and sadly, in our clinical practice, we see a lot of young girls under the age of 20 who are overdiagnosed, or I should rather say misdiagnosed with PCOS. Now, the thing that we need to know is that this Rotterdam criteria basically is for the adult population. It was elucidated, initiated only for the adult population. It is not a validated criteria for the adolescent girls. And the reason for that is because a lot of symptoms like acne, irregular menstruation, even polycystic ovarian morphology on the ultrasound can be a normal physiological finding in young girls under the age of 20. So recently, the Royal College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, as well as the American Society of Reproductive Medicine, have proposed that in order to label a girl with polycystic ovarian syndrome under the age of 20, she should be fulfilling or meeting all the three criteria, all the three parameters in the Rotterdam criteria, not just two, like it was mentioned in the presentation. That's only for the adult population. So, and the importance of this is because, labeling a young girl with PCOS under the age of 20 can generate a lot of anxiety, not only in the girl, but in the family as well, because there can be a lot of concerns regarding the future fertility in the girl. So this is something that we should be mindful of, and we should be very careful before we label any girl with PCOS under the age of 20. So now I'd like to open the session for question and answers. For those who are joining us through Zoom, you can raise up your hands and we will take your questions one by one. Do we have any questions from those who have joined us? Yes, Dr. Mustafa.
Slight confusion. You're saying that anybody under the age of 20
yes.
is not an adult?
They are an adult, but because they are, sorry, I used the wrong word.
Adolescents,
yes.
What we need to
in the teen years, yeah.
So what happens is if I get a hypermobile 17-year-old girl coming with other manifestations, do I class her as an adult? Adult
by definition, of course, is 18 years.
Yeah.
But we tend to take the teen years as the years of adolescence, right? So menstrual irregularity, we do not really treat immediately girls with irregular periods immediately for, we don't label them immediately as PCOS. Dr. Ghazala, you want to add anything?
Basic concern ये है कि जब once menarche starts, menstruation starts, at that age, even hypothalamic pituitary ovarian axis, it is not that much mature to be pulsatile away. तो वो ये होता है कि उनमें जो उसके disordered जो उसकी रिलीज है उसकी वजह से disordered FSH और LH आ रहा होता है और immature follicles बन रहे होते हैं. Even in the guidelines and evidence base, they say within 2 years of menarche, you should not label it as polycystic ovarian syndrome. And in some cases, they have reported that even in some of the girls, hypothalamic pituitary ovarian axis may take up to 5 years. Up to 5. So तो आप उसको तक label नहीं कर सकते. It's not the matter of 20 or less than 20. Basically, the concern is that after the 5 years or 2 years of menarche, क्योंकि menarche किसी में 11 पे start हो जाएगी menstruation, किसी पे 12 पे हो जाएगी, किसी पे 13 पे हो जाएगी, मतलब vary करती है ये.
My question being as a non-gynecologist, at what time should we be looking at adults का कह रही है ना?
Referring a patient usually comes to us first when she has
there are two things, like as Dr. Ram said, that because of the hypothalamic it starts like at the time of menarche, there is pulsatile cycle that is irregular. Sometimes the patient comes to us up to 15 years menstrual irregularity.
I think did this you yeah.
It's like up to 15 years. 13 would be like Dr. Iram said, 2 years is the age, and if it goes to
settle down or after 2 years, then you can send it for the investigation.
Did you get your answer, Dr. Mustafa?
Not really, but I'll work it out. But
okay, no. So see, You're only basically asking for the the adolescents, right?
Right. Okay, I'll give you a live example.
She should, fulfill all the three criteria, which were explained in the Rotterdam criteria.
Just
If you
after,
can go back to
after
the slide.
she starts having periods,
Yeah.
if she fulfills these criteria,
She should fulfill all the three instead of two. Yeah. So, any questions, Dr. Aisha? Dr. Iram, would you like to join me, please, here?
Yeah.
Melanie?
But for you, that was
straight.
Yeah, Dr. Aisha has a question. Yeah.
Ultrasound, can we have a growing follicle in a polycystic ovary? Because during our training we were taught that if you see a growing follicle within a polycystic ovary, it negates the diagnosis.
Mostly. Because
Yeah.
of the
Because sometimes I've seen appearance of a polycystic ovary, but then I see a growing follicle inside it. But they tend to have 10 ovulatory cycles.
डॉक्टर आयशा इसी तरीके से जिस तरह कि बहुत से पेशेंट एनोवुलेटरी चल रहे हैं, उनकी साइकिल्स एनोवुलेटरी हैं, लेकिन अल्टीमेटली वो वेट रिडक्शन और ये लाइफस्टाइल मॉडिफिकेशन इस तरह की चीजें करते हैं, तो उनकी इंसुलिन रेजिस्टेंस जो है ऑलरेडी जो इंक्रीज हुई होती है वो कम हो जाती है और इंसुलिन सेंसिटिविटी इंप्रूव हो जाती है. वंस इंसुलिन सेंसिटिविटी इंप्रूव्स, उसके रिसेप्टर्स होते हैं, अल्टीमेटली ओव्यूलेशन उससे बेहतर हो जाती है. तो हो सकता है उसकी एक ओवरी के अंदर आपको नजर आ रहे हो इसी तरह इमेच्योर फॉलिकल्स, लेकिन एट द सेम टाइम ओव्यूलेशन दूसरी ओवरी में
So we can
improve
give
कर
her
सकते हैं.
polycystic ovary with other criteria of ultrasound are met.
Let me tell you. If you have seen polycystic ovary, ultrasound you will say that. डॉक्टर इरम ने ये कहा था तो ये थोड़ा सा कंफ्यूज शायद हो गए कि you can't comment on that. You will comment, but we will see. We will see after that whether FSH, LH is released or other things are present. But you will tell us about the polycystic.
मैम जिस तरह आप मेंशन करते हैं कि पॉलीसिस्टिक ओवरीज आप लिखते हैं एंड प्लीज कोरिलेट क्लिनिकली. वो आप कर सकते हैं, लेकिन पॉलीसिस्टिक ओवरी सिंड्रोम मतलब आप यू कांट यूज इट. सिंड्रोम मेंशन नहीं कर सकते क्योंकि अगर
Polycystic ovaries, appearance of polycystic.
Sometimes they write it down that it's only the one ovary and the other ovary is alright. One ovary is polycystic and slightly bulky.
And even then, if one ovary and it met the same criteria of the Rotterdam, that more than 12 follicles, the size is around 2 to 9 millimeters and volume is more than 10 centimeters.
I've also read somewhere in journals that even if the volume of the ovary is normal, but the appearance is that what matters. What matters, appearance. But in most of the adolescents, we see a polycystic appearance.
So we will see again. We will then correlate with
Aisha, can repeat लेकिन रिसेंटली यही है जो ये जो पैरामीटर्स ये मैंने आपको बताएंगे रिसेंटली अपडेटेड है. अब आप कर सकते हैं इसके बेसिस. रिसेंट गाइडलाइंस में भी मेंशन है, ईश्रे में भी और आरसीटी दोनों गाइडलाइंस.
Okay, so we have Dr. Kesser Mahmood, who's also got a question. Yes, Dr. Kesser, you can ask the question. Please unmute yourself.
Assalamualaikum.
Assalamualaikum.
I'm Dr. Kesser. I'm a diabetologist and nephrologist in Gujranwala. I have only one question regarding weight loss. Yes, I have only one question regarding weight loss. We are giving metformin also for sometimes beneficial in weight loss. Can we give also the early state for the reduction of the weight?
Dr. Kesser, could you please, repeat the question? We could not hear you properly.
जी मैं ये कह रहा था कि हम मेटफॉर्मिन तो देते ही हैं लेकिन उससे वेट रिडक्शन तो थोड़ी बहुत होती है, लेकिन मेनली ऑर्ली स्टेट भी दिया जा सकता है टू रिड्यूस द वेट.
Yes, would you like to ask the question, Dr.
Yes, to reduce the weight up to 5% at least, we say that it should be weight reduction should be our target should be up to 5%, and we can give early stage. We are giving early stage for the reduction.
obese में रोल है metformin का because they have hyperinsulinemia.
Sometimes even we do hyperinsulinemia. Should I?
Yes, please come, because I think it's going to be difficult for the listeners on Zoom to hear your voice.
Okay, your question was that can we give early stage in polycystic ovarian syndrome to reduce the weight?
Yes,
Dr.
yes,
Kesser?
yes, जी जी बिल्कुल यही बात कर।
Okay, Hanji, we do give orlistat for to reduce the weight of the patient for polycystic ovarian syndrome, along with metformin.
Okay, thank you. Great.
Any other questions? Yes, Dr. Oka.
Do we know what triggers the excessive release of LH from the follicles? Or
Exact causes is not known.
But it is like a vicious cycle. Like when we see on the hypothalamic pituitary axis, LHFSH, it is secreted from the hypothalamus and pituitary axis, and it comes on the ovum. There is some, it is actually multifactorial. Like maybe genetic, maybe there is genetic mutation. Some say that there is genetic mutation in the girls. In the family, if one is like a girl comes to you with polycystic ovaries, her sisters, her mother may have polycystic ovaries. Okay, and for that there is insulin resistance. Because of insulin resistance, what was your question?
what starts them in first place? Like,
Basically,
why does LH?
Insulin resistance, when it causes, there is insulin resistance and insulin is increased. That's why the glucose is not utilized, and it makes the adipose tissue like fat. And the LH FSH is increased. LH is increased on the theta cell, and FSH can't work that much like LH. LH increases androgen.
And we don't know the first point.
Exactly, cause is not known.
First point, yeah, exactly. That's why we say that it is very much preventable if it is reduced. Insulin is less, and it causes again the normalization of the ovulation and everything.
Yes, Dr.
Thank you, Dr. Aram, for a nice presentation. My question is about OHSS. It's a serious complication of the induction. For my 20 years in emergency medicine, I've seen about 2 or 3 cases, but they have been misdiagnosed invariably. And one of the reasons was that the patient did not have actual information, okay, what was she taking and what was going on. So I would suggest, this is a suggestion in our place, if we can do this, that if we induce somebody with polycystic ovarian syndrome, can we give them advice sheet to bring down to the ER? Because by the time we ask them,
complication develop.
Actually, I'm working, I'm like a infertility specialist. That's why I have seen many patients with visit. But the thing is, again, if we treat the patient, we should track her. Not like we give her traumapine and she can go home. She will come on day 12 and we will see after that. And if we see that there is polycystic, like there is more follicles that are dominant, then we can say that this may go into hyperstimulation, then we advise them. Yes, we can have that.
Yeah, if we can just have an advice sheet that if you develop any abdominal pain, when you go to the emergency, please bring
This is the ideal thing to counsel the patient. When we are giving ovulation induction, we should tell them these are the signs and symptoms of the ovarian hyperstimulation. You may develop these symptoms. Kindly come and you can tell that you have taken this medicine.
Couple of questions, comments, I don't know, 2 of them. मेरा हमेशा एक सवाल होता है कि I want to see probability in your discussion. Example, this particular criteria, I have no idea what is the sensitivity and specificity of this particular criteria. What is the AUC curve that you want to see with this kind of criteria? So हमें वो डेटा भी थोड़ा सा टेक आउट करने की जरूरत है. इसी तरह कॉज एंड इफेक्ट की हम बात करते हैं. हम लोग एज ए स्लीप पर्सन, I see a lot of the females with sleep apnea. So I पूछ सकता हूँ, so what percentage of people with sleep apnea, females, may have polycystic ovaries? Similarly, आप सवाल में बता सकती हैं कि polycystic ovaries के patients में कितने % sleep apnea होता है. तो मुझे जो अंडरस्टैंडिंग थोड़ी डेवलप हुई है आपकी बातों से, it seems like ये सिंगल डिजीज नहीं है. ये एक मेटाबॉलिक सिंड्रोम है जिसकी मल्टीपल मैनिफेस्टेशन, वो मैनिफेस्टेशन कहीं पे ज्यादा ले जाती हैं आपको पॉलीसिस्टिक ओवेरियन सिंड्रोम की तरफ, और कहीं पे ले जाती हैं कुछ और डिस्लिपिडीमिया, डायबिटीज और इस तरह का डिसऑर्डर लगता है. तो एक तो ये कि I would really appreciate कि अगर आप हमें प्राइस किया करें इनके कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स के बारे में, जिसको हम टेस्ट स्टैटिस्टिक्स कहते हैं, डायग्नोस्टिक स्टैटिस्टिक्स कहते हैं, और कुछ हमें रिसर्च के बारे में बताया करें। मतलब हम पाकिस्तान का डेटा क्या है, हम हमेशा वेस्ट की बात तो करते हैं, लेकिन बच्चे तो हमारे हैं यहाँ, तो वी नीड टू नो कि हमारे पाकिस्तान में स्टडीज हुई है वो क्या क्या, तो कितनी इन लाइन है विद वेस्टर्न स्टडीज। So that's another thing that maybe it is always wonderful to see that kind of data in these kind of presentations. और finally हम लोग males, तो टेस्टोस्टेरोन जो है वो LH और HSH की सारी बैलेंस है उसको कंट्रोल कर रहा होता है। अब होता है कि नेगेटिव फीडबैक लूप बन रहा होता है। People with primary testicular failure, whatever, they will have high levels of LH. इन पेशेंट्स में तो एंड्रोजन ज़्यादा होते हैं, उसको मतलब LH को ये इनहिबिट नहीं करते, लेकिन येट LH ज़्यादा होते हैं। तो सीम्स लाइक देयर इज समथिंग रॉन्ग विद द प्राइमरी सिक्रीशन, और वो आई एम श्योर उस पे मेटाबॉलिक स्टडीज हुई होंगी या रिसेप्टर स्टडीज हुई होंगी जो कि हम स्टोर कर सकते हैं। तो वो डिफेक्ट आप कहाँ पर है, वो जेनेटिकली हो या व्हाटएवर हो, तो इट हैज टू बी सम काइंड ऑफ कंट्रोलिंग डिफेक्ट, वhether हाइपोथैलेमस से चल रहा है या वो पिट्यूटरी से आ रहा है। तो those kind of data probably वो भी थोड़ा सा हेल्प करेगा। तो आई थिंक बहुत सारे रिसर्च के सवाल इसमें से ओरिजिनेट होते हैं और हो सकता है कुछ आंसर भी होगा।
Yes, there is no answer because like जिस तरह हम उसको करते हैं कि कॉन्फ्रेंस में, तो दे से कि there is no answer for it. मतलब स्टार्ट का भी पता नहीं चल रहा है।
हम लोग कॉन्फ्रेंस के बाद भी बात करते हैं, हम कहते हैं कि एक्चुअल स्टडीज की बात हो, ताकि वो हो सकता है किसी ने कोई ऑब्जर्वेशनल लॉन्ग टर्म स्टडी की, इस तरह लॉन्ग टर्म सीक्वल की आपने बात की। I want to know if equal ovarian size number of follicles 10 साल के बाद, 30 साल के बाद उन्हें क्या होता है? क्या ये डिजीज बर्नआउट हो जाती है? तो क्या ये डिजीज जब शुरू होती है मेनॉर्टी से 2 साल के बाद, तो क्या वो मेनोपॉज से 5 साल पहले तक वैसे की वैसी है? तो इस तरह के सवाल निकलते हैं जो कि लॉन्ग टर्म सीक्वल में हेल्प करेंगे। क्या ताल्लुक है इसका बोन डेंसिटी के साथ मुझे नहीं पता, बेबी उसका already have some idea कि क्या osteoporosis होता है नहीं होता मुझे नहीं पता। So
yes, like you rightly said, it's a confluence of symptoms, and the reason why I asked that question was that we do get these adolescent chubby girls with valgus, hypermobile knees, and they're not, they're not syndromic, but they're not quite right, and that's where we say we need a multidisciplinary approach to help them. Obviously, in adolescence, bone mass index so under the 20 peak पे 20 पे पहुंचता है, whether it's a girl or boy. After 20 it starts dropping, and I think you're very valid for us to check whether bone mass density accelerates or reduces or accelerates towards osteoporosis early in these group of individuals. I personally don't have that answer right now, and that's the reason why I asked. If I pick somebody with these manifestations or surges are carrying with sleep apnea patients, do we need to get help from you guys earlier on or not?
Is it Dr. Ghazal?
Actually, इससे यही है कि जब हम बात करते हैं पॉलिसिस्टिक ओवरी की, तो we say कि this is multi-faceted, but the first line of treatment we say as early as possible when it is diagnosed. The first line of treatment is change of lifestyle, और कुछ नहीं है, it's prevention. ये जाता नहीं, don't go. Like there is no treatment for this. There is a prevention will get lifestyle change, weight reduction, exercise, when lifestyle changes, most of the things are like BMI, we say 25 per kg per example, this is the BMI of that point. But in girls, if they are about 55, I have seen any girls 55 पे हैं, or if they go up to 60 kg, तो मेरे polycystic ovary is the diagnosis. Because they gain weight. अगर weight को control करते हैं, exercise करते हैं, everything, then it means that first thing is prevention of it is change of lifestyle. उसके बाद चीजें जो treatment के बाद में और long consequences जो आती हैं, तो देखो मैसेज जो होना चाहिए कि सबसे पहले awareness, counseling of the parents whenever the girl comes to, not like जरूरी नहीं है कि उसको हमने देखा है, उसकी बहुत सी चीजें सारी जब she comes on the criteria, this is the criteria and they are diagnosed for polycystic ovary, no, then the first thing is to change the lifestyle.
Actually, it is different in unmarried girls and it is different in married women. And moreover, if the girl comes to you, usually the mothers are very, बहुत सब परेशान होती हैं mothers, they Google it and they have an ultrasound. and they have some criteria, she's getting weight and she's not moving and she's having hirsutism, and then they go for ultrasound and even they start the glucophage and everything themselves. आजकल ये सब हो रहा है. So we have to treat in different. उनको फिर ये होता है कि when she will get married, whether she will have pregnancy or not, whether she will have miscarriage. So हमें ये सारी चीजें first to treat it in unmarried girls, and then they come with infertility, and then they have to give different.
Any other questions? Do we have any dermatologists in the room? No.
No,
I think we have one on Zoom. Dr. Samina, can you hear us? Would you like to share your perspective on polycystic ovarian syndrome?
I cannot hear them. But
Yeah, I think we'll come to it.
Okay. Okay, so I'd like to invite Dr. Ghazala to share her thoughts on the presentation and the talk before we could conclude this session.
Thank you very much. Very nice presentation by my assistant consultant, Dr. Iram. मेरा ख्याल है कि सब कुछ आई थिंक बहुत अच्छे तरीके से डॉक्टर इरम ने elaborate कर लिया, but I wanted to tell my experiences because I work mostly in this type of patients with they come to me mostly polycystic ovarian syndrome and infertility. In early age, like girls, when they come to you, they are like, you see that the patient comes, she's unmarried, she is she is having her ultrasound in her hand and she's crying. She's saying that it's multicystic and I have cysts, because this is like जैसे कि polycystic ovaries से mind में यही आता है कि cysts है, बहुत सी cysts है. That's why some professor of, I think he was Indian, he said that it should not be labeled as polycystic ovaries, it should be labeled as polyfollicular ovaries, because these are follicles, these are not cysts, these are follicles, and that if we say that these are follicles, then उनका जो वो mental होता है, torture होता है, क्योंकि हमारे पास हमेशा patients के parents, mother आई हुई है और उसने हाथ में चीज ली और रो रहे हैं. We say this is not like, इसमें इस तरह की कोई problem नहीं है जिसके लिए आप इतना रो रहे हैं. It's simple. It's every second, third girl have polycystic ovaries. Mostly. हमारे पास जो patients आते हैं उनके होते हैं, इसमें इतना problem नहीं है, but it's a preventable syndrome. It's a syndrome. It's a multifactorial syndrome. That's why we can't say that what is the exact treatment of this. But if we see it has long consequences, like Dr. Iram said, and infertility is one of them, and we can treat accordingly. If they are obese, they should reduce their weight. If they have infertility, then we can treat infertility accordingly. And if they have diabetes or hypertension, we can refer to medical physicians, and like this. It is a multidisciplinary, multifactorial syndrome. But we should understand that we should give them some like advice to the parents that if there is amenorrhea, if the girl is obese, if she's getting more obese, then she should come and consult the gynecologist. Thank you.